You're listening to the Real Women in Business podcast. I'm your host, Cass McCrory, and in this podcast, we highlight women in all kinds of businesses. For yourself, someone else, full-time, part-time, overtime hustle, together we will learn from and with one another. And if we get it right, it'll lift us all. Let's get into it. Friends, I am so excited for you to meet my dear friend, Whitney Sabins, today. Whitney is a mom of two, a busy working professional. She has a full-time job as a business development consultant. She also has a side hustle of a wardrobe business. She has a Rodan and Fields business. This woman is on the move, and she shares so much goodness about living a full life, accepting and embracing the challenges that you've had, and moving forward with just palpable grace. You'll hear it yourself. I can't wait to jump in. Here's Whitney. Whitney, welcome to the Real Women in Business podcast. I'm so excited to have you.
Thank you. Excited to be chatting with you this morning.
I think the first thing I'd love to do is to have you share a few words about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So, Whitney Sabins here, also known as Whit, W, Sabins, Sabes, wife, mom, and mama. I am in business development for a local consulting firm here in Hartford, Connecticut, and also entrepreneur.
Awesome. Now, Whitney and I have known each other for, a long time, like 8 or 9 years now.
Yep.
Lexi was just a little baby, and we were going to a new church in Greenwich, Connecticut, and you were one of the leaders of that church.
Yes, exactly. And I remember Lexi, and I can see her in my mind looking at me in the pew when she was just like a toddler, I feel like. So it's been a long time.
It has.
Yep.
So I'd love to share kind of the journey about kind of how you've gotten to this place in your life. And tell me about that.
Yeah, I know. I love this question because it's so reflective.
It is.
So I'll kind of start at the beginning, really. So it has definitely been a journey for sure. And I'll kind of start from high school because for me, that's kind of really where things just began. I had grown up really involved in theater, dancing, singing, and acting as a middle schooler and high schooler. And that was really like my first love. And that becoming an actress was also a big dream for my parents too, which is really interesting. But when it came down to choosing a career, quote unquote, acting wasn't really my first choice. And I quickly learned that fashion was the perfect fit, no pun intended there. So I ended up graduating from FIT, Fashion Institute of Technology in New York City, and landed an internship with Ralph Lauren at the ripe old age of 19. And that internship really was sort of the launching pad for my 12-year career with Ralph Lauren. So that into itself was an incredible experience working for the brand. And I just feel so blessed because I was there in the company's heyday, and I got to work with some of the most creative geniuses in the industry. So that truly was sort of like the company that I grew up in, so to speak. And then fast forward to 2009, got married. And only 2 months after getting married, found out that we were pregnant, which was not planned, but that's all good. And I had every intention of being a working mom. And it really wasn't until kind of that 11th hour, so to speak, that as a family, we decided that I would stay at home and with our son. So I ended up resigning from the fashion industry after my maternity leave was up. And that was the hardest decision I have ever had to make. So, and I remember, I was like sitting there and I had resigned, and no one ever really fully prepares you for the emotions that followed that decision. And I remember thinking like, okay, that's it. It's over. all that time just like gone. And it was it. It was just done. And I just was like, even my identity, it just felt like my identity had gone too. And so I definitely wasn't prepared for the emotions that kind of followed up after that. But after kind of that resignation period, I ended up taking kind of a part-time job working with the youth at our local church. That's where you and I had met. And at the same time was also working alongside my dad, doing some retail consulting, just to kind of keep my hands in the business, so to speak. And so then fast forward to 2012, my husband's job at the time was in question because his then company was in the process of being sold off. Things were not looking good for him and his job. And on top of that, I was pregnant now with our second child. So we ended up moving to Kentucky, which everyone's like, why did you move there? But Alan, my husband, found a job out there through one of our dearest friends, and we moved. We stayed in Kentucky for almost 2 years, one of the toughest periods in my life. I remember just being on the plane with McCare, my daughter, 2 months old, Keegan, almost 3, my son, leaving every single comfort behind us, including family. So we knew that our stay wouldn't be that long. So in 2014, we found ourselves kind of trekking back to Connecticut, where my husband, Alan, landed a different job. So again, another move back home, thankfully with friends and family. But it was really interesting kind of as the dust settled, and I say that both figuratively and literally, I just became very anxious and sort of almost like a slight depression kind of kicked in for me. And I felt like I didn't really have another purpose than being mom. And not that being mom isn't this, it's an incredible purpose. And it's one of the best jobs that we are gifted as females. However, it just started to take a toll on me. And around 6 months of being in our new home and just kind of that longing for more, I ended up launching a chapter of an organization that's focused on youth, and that's called Young Life here in our town, and also launched a side business with Rodan and Fields. And both of those things kind of combined, helped me kind of get some sort of confidence back. I started to feel good again. I was speaking to adults on a regular basis. So it was good, but I still at the pit of me, I just was still not 100%. So I remember quite vividly, and Alan and I talk about this frequently. So we were on a date night one evening, and, we're having like this big heart to heart. And he literally just looks at me and says, you have to stop denying your DNA. You are wired to work, and that's okay. And I just remember bursting out into tears because I knew he was right. And I was at this sort of pivotal time in my life, and just was like, okay, well, what do I do? Where do I start? So I knew I had to get back into the workplace at some point, and just was, I was very fearful. I was thinking, all right, who in the world is going to hire me? I've officially now been out of work for many years. Plus, we didn't live near or around New York City, so it was a really it was a difficult okay, what's next kind of question. So I ended up going into business development for a recruiting firm, and that job it landed in my lap. It was through networking. I only interviewed 3 times and, got the job within 5 days. And so literally was back to work, within, a few days. I got my sea legs back, so to speak. I worked really hard at that position. I knew it wasn't a forever job. And so just when I was starting to feel okay, God, is this really what I'm supposed to be doing? Is this really where you have me? I was then recruited by another consulting firm called Slalom, and I started that job back in June of 2018, and that's where I am now. I'm still in business development, and because I love this role. I love being in business development because at my core, I'm truly obsessed with leaving people better off than I found them. I love, helping people solve complex problems, love to be creative at work and work collaboratively with others. And I think for me too, what Solemn has helped me realize is that doing this and going back to work has sparked on some other business ventures for me too. It's really given me the confidence to make those decisions. And I'm working on right now a wardrobing business for women, men, and children. And one of the things that I recognized about myself is just that, being in the fashion industry for so long, when that's not part of what you're doing on a day-to-day or even on a kind of on an intermittent basis, it really is very detrimental to me, just because I'm not doing something that I'm like, I really, really love, right? Like I'm really passionate about. It brings me such joy to work still like in the fashion industry in some sort of capacity. So I just learned that, okay, I need to be doing this on the side somehow. So I can't really deny that passion. So that's why I've kind of said, okay, let's do something else on the side just to kind of keep that going. Because that's just one of my true loves. So, but yeah, so I guess that's the journey from from then until now. So
there is so much I want to dig into, and I have so many questions. There's so much that I didn't know before this conversation. Yeah. So I'm thrilled.
Go for it.
I'd love to go back to that night when Alan said to you, "You're wired to work."
Yep. Yeah.
How did that feel? How did that feel to receive?
So I know that's such a great question. So to me, when he had said that, I immediately started crying because I knew it was true. And I think for so long I just was denying it for so long, and then I got to a point where I didn't even know I was denying it anymore about myself. So it was like when someone's like, do you remember how to ride a bike? You're like, oh, I think I do. It was like very like, you're right. But then it was like this moment of like, uh-oh, what did I just say yes to? Almost like, yes, I do. But so there was a lot of fear behind that as well. And I think it was just such a mixed bag of emotions at that point. So
I think I'm so intrigued by this because I am also wired to work. I know that to be true. I find great fulfillment in the work.
Right.
What was having you deny it?
Yeah, I think what had happened was I was just in a very interesting emotional state, and I think I just got comfortable being just a mom. I think I was feeling like, okay, well, I'm just going to do this. Like, I'm just going to do this and just kind of go with it. This is where this is the season of life I'm in, and I'm just going to just do this. And and I think that's where kind of like that anxiety and that depression kind of lingered in, unfortunately, because it was just almost a sad acceptance of sorts, of just like, this is just it. So, and it was also, I was also kind of in that position because of our family situation too. Alan's job, his multiple jobs throughout the years when I was raising our children and still raising them, obviously, but we were just never at a point as a family for me to have that moment to go out and work. It was, but all his jobs were very strenuous, long hours, lots of travel. So it was almost, I was in a position where I couldn't just say, okay, like I'm going to go work full time now too. So, and I think that was the struggle that I literally struggled with. Mm-hmm. It was like, how do I still support my family, and how do I best support my family and my husband? So I think it was kind of all of that, if that makes sense, just kind of wrapped into one very messy bow.
It totally does make sense. And I think that it's, we're not alone in how we've felt that. I think that as women, at least I can say this for me is true, feeling a level of dissatisfaction in just being a mom felt shameful. Like, why do I think that I should get to feel more than just that?
Right.
And when I got really clear about it, my mom worked and I loved her, and there was no disconnect, and, she wasn't a working mom. She was just my mom who worked.
Right.
And I think when we disconnect those two thoughts of, are you a working mom? Are you a mom who works? I feel like there's a lot of energy transfer that happens in that shift.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Yep. Mm.
How is this life different than what you had imagined when you were that, FIT
Goodness.
grad, deep in Ralph Lauren?
Yeah. Oh, I love sharing this too because I actually get this question a lot because obviously I was in the fashion industry. So I have vivid memories. Like I remember where I was standing, I thought I had this all figured out. I was like mid-20s and was like, well, at 27, I'm going to be like senior director of such and such at Ralph. I'm going to have, I'm going to get married the following year, have kids, but guess what? I'm going right back to work as soon as I have them. And I remember being like, well, and it was Blackberries back then, I was like, I'm going to have my Blackberry with me in the hospital. I had this vision of, just really climbing the corporate ladder in an organization that I truly loved and adored. And that was it. It was like, I was just going to continue to climb that ladder and be a part of Ralph Lauren forever. So that's what I thought of. And I love how life just can turn those kind of dreams and, upside down and just say, okay, well, it's not going to end that way, so, so it's been cool. It's been cool to be a part of, obviously.
Yeah.
And to watch, and to look back and see that, 23-year-old self and just say, okay, you had lots of hopes and dreams, but guess what? It's even better than you'd ever imagined. So I think that's the neatest part.
I think that is the neatest part too. I'm regularly working with clients in a coaching capacity and, they're like, I just want to know what I'm going to be doing in 5 years. I just want to know how this is going to turn out in 10 years. And I think to myself, no, you don't.
Yeah.
Like, you really don't. If you look back at where you were 5 years ago, if you look back to where you were 10 years ago, you could never have imagined how amazing this was. And if you had stuck to that plan, look at all you would have missed out on.
Right. Exactly. Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
The journey is much better when you kind of loosen the grip a little bit and see how it all flows, because it somehow does work out.
Absolutely.
So I see you as like a powerhouse, just, so many different passions and really out there, encouraging. And I definitely can witness you as somebody that does leave people better than you found them.
Thank you.
Every single time. What do you think your greatest advantage is because you're a woman in business?
Yes. So I think it's a couple of things. So, and I kind of almost want to answer this like holistically when I think of females in general. And so I think first and foremost, I think one of the advantages that we have, I think, and also I'm thinking of myself too, is like this strength. And it's like a very quiet strength. Because I think when we think of men in kind of business, I almost think of a physical strength. And I love when I think of women in business, or even just myself, it's this sort of like relentless, quiet strength that we have. Because I think that we've been given, I think we have an amazing talent to do so much and to be so productive and strong. Like that's what I think of. And I also think emotional intelligence is something that is a huge advantage for women, and a massive advantage out in the workplace. And also just sort of this hidden, and I guess I'll say quiet again, but this quiet, it's almost a relentless pursuit of a dream. And it's a relentless pursue. And it reminds me of myself too, because whether we're pursuing being a mom or a working mom or whatever it is, I always feel like there's just this amazing relentless pursuit to succeed in whatever season of life she is in. That's what I think of.
I love that. So I know you have a daughter.
Yes. She's pretty awesome.
Yeah. What advice do you want her to learn from you?
Oh, I know. I feel like that could be a title of a book. But yeah, I think for her, like, I first and foremost, I feel so blessed that she can see mom in so many different capacities, whether it's from working every day to running side businesses to serving at church to, whatever it may be. But, at the end of the day, I want her to stay curious, because staying curious and asking lots of questions is just good. It's good for life. It's good for the soul. And it's, I think for females especially, it's very important to continue to question and to push back where needed. So staying curious for me is a huge one. And also keeping options open. This was a piece of advice that I have received from my parents growing up. Always keep your options open. Never have, sort of this one path only kind of thinking. And so, because with that, obviously when you keep your options open, there's so many different paths that are available to you. And like you said, kind of in the beginning, I feel like a lot of people will miss other opportunities if they're not open, right? So that was one. I think taking risks is another one. I mean, she already does this now, and I just hope that she continues to do it, because obviously as we get older, we become more inhibited. But taking those risks, and then if she fails, and when she fails, not to beat herself up for that, right? Because I think there's a lot of like that ickiness that comes with failing, I think, as a female, like, oh, I guess I didn't do it. And I think the beauty of it is just to kind of holding on to it, but then saying, I did the best that I could, but what did I learn? And not to beat yourself up when you fail. And also, I think the last two pieces of advice are really just stop apologizing for being human. And I think this is sort of a thing that you learn as you get older, but it just is one thing I can't stand, and I see it so much in women, is that we just perpetually apologize for just being ourselves, and it's just like, I don't understand. It's like, I'm sorry I'm late, or I'm sorry, it's like, I stop, but for some reason, women we just tend to have that. So I would want her not to do that. And then lastly, to take care of herself. Whether that's mentally, physically, spiritually, financially, all of those things. I think that's super, super, super important. So those are kind of my pieces of advice for her.
I love it. I'm curious, how do you take care of yourself?
Yeah, so when I do, and I have learned that phrase, taking care of yourself, really means different things to people. So for me, I have figured out what that means for Whitney. Because I think a lot of times when we hear taking care of ourselves, we mean like, okay, well, we're going to go to the spa and get a massage. We're going to go get our hair done or our nails done. But what if that really meant like what does it mean for you personally? And a while back, I want to say almost a year back, one of my good friends from church, she really challenged me on this and was like, what brings you joy in your life? Like, what is bringing you that joy? Like, what is sparking that joy on a day-to-day basis for you? And I was like, I don't know. Like, I really struggled with that for a good, like, solid few months. And I had just kept, like, wondering. So I have kind of gotten it down to, how do I take care of myself? And a lot of it is really doing sort of these tactical things, whether it's like working out, like, so I love to run. I'm a runner. So doing something more physical for me is helpful. But it's also pouring back into other people. And that's kind of where this other side business, the wardrobing business, kind of came from. It was bringing me so much life, so that I was like, well, I need to continue to do it in a meaningful way that's going to work for our family. So that's another thing that I do. But I also, every morning I have quiet time. I wake up early while everyone is still sleeping, and I journal. I read through my devotions. And I also love to sing. I still love to sing. So that's something that just really feeds my soul. Creating anything with my hands does. And it's also, I think for me, it's noticing things that maybe people don't really notice on a regular basis. Whether that's like just noticing something, like it was so funny because the other day I was riding with a colleague. We were riding to a client, and I was obviously in the passenger seat, and I'm looking out the window. I'm like, oh, I found 5 deer on the side of the road, and I just wonder sometimes if people would even notice those things. So I try to notice things around me in nature. I know that sounds very simple, but I think a lot of us take that for granted. And I would say kind of the last few things really. Antiquing. I love to antique with my husband. Like, we love to find vintage things. I love that. Anything to do with my kids, like doing something adventurous with them. And then I think lastly, sipping on a fantastic cup of coffee every day is definitely something that I do to take care of myself.
I think that's awesome. And I love asking this question of women, because every time I'm hearing, a really different version. And I love that. Yeah, I love that because, we have this vision of what it is to take care of yourself. And it's the spa and working out. And, it's all very kind of cookie cutter traditional. But that isn't what actually is taking good care.
Right.
And I think that by showcasing women and how they take care of themselves, it really gives every person permission to do it their own way.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yep.
So thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it.
Yep.
I know that so many people are looking at you as their go-to person, and you are a very stylish lady.
Thank you. Appreciate
What
it.
is your best piece of fashion advice for a woman in business?
Yeah. Oh, that's a hard question. That is a hard question. So my mind immediately goes to ensure that you're wearing the right types of clothes that work with your body type. Yeah. And so and that's kind of a loaded thing too, because I think, unfortunately or fortunately, in life, I think a lot of people were never taught how to dress or how to shop for their body type. And especially as women, we have way more options than just khakis and a button down every day like men. I think it's very simple. They have very simple decisions to make every morning. But I think for women, we have just so many more options to choose from. And it can get muddled, and it can get very confusing quite quickly. And that's one of the things that I do in my side business, is really to educate women on, okay, if this is your body type, let's work with it. This is how we're going to, make the clothes work for you and not the other way around, right? So I would definitely say figure out what your body type is and dress per your body type.
So where do I start with this? I'm so curious about this body type and how I should be dressing. Where do I start?
Great question. And I get it all the time. So just kind of keeping in mind, I love to do these things in person. So typically what I do is I create something for you. It's a very tailored type of resource. So obviously once I get to know a person, right, and their body type, I will literally put together a resource for you, whether it's a 1-page recap or even a lookbook, so to speak, just because I want people I want to invest in that time for people and kind of take out the guesswork for people. So I much prefer creating that resource for an individual. So I'd be happy for people to reach out to me individually, just because for me, that's the level of service that I like to provide. So
I love that. Well, I'm going to be reaching out because I definitely would love this support, and I'm sure that other listeners will too. So we're going to give everybody the contact details on how to get in touch with you about that. Perfect. At the end of the show. Awesome.
You got it.
All right. What is something you wish people would ask you about?
You know what's so funny? The first thing I thought of is I wish that people would ask me more questions about being a mom and the struggles that come with it. One thing I think women are really good at, and I think I think unfortunately social media plays a role in this, right? I think we live in a world right now where there's a lot of highlights going on. There's a lot of good things are happening and only being shown. And I think if we could get more vulnerable and really share in the messiness, I think we could do a lot more for our world. I really think by doing that, it would go so much farther than how we're presenting ourselves now.
Yeah. Yeah, I think, there are so many challenges in, being a mom and being in business, whether it's for yourself or for other people.
Yep.
I liken it to the 50 cents a cap story where it feels like some days I'm wearing so many different hats. I can't even really keep them on my head. And just kind of acknowledging the need to put some of the hats down.
Right.
To be fully present in doing any one thing.
Yep.
And I think putting those hats down and just being like, okay, this is what I've got going on, and sharing that. And I hope that this podcast is a place for that because, I feel like if nobody is showcasing that, then we don't know that we have permission to do it.
Exactly. Yep.
And
absolutely.
for whatever reason, we are seeking permission.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I think so. Mm-hmm.
All right. The next question I have is, in what area are you creating more ease in your life right now?
More ease. Yeah, I know that's a good question. I think it's my home life. It might sound really backwards for some people, but going back to work full time has actually helped me be at ease at home. When I was in the home, I was very restless and anxious, and it became a source of anxiousness for me. And so now that I'm out of the home most days, even though some days I work from home, but obviously I'm doing a different job while I'm here. It's just become much more at ease for me.
Yeah, I think I can relate to that because when you have everything tied up and invested in one space,
right,
it really puts a lot of pressure on that to be just so.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
And I think there's a real advantage there, and I think sometimes we forget it is hard, right? Mm-hmm. This is a hard thing to do, to be a working mom, to do everything that we do. It's hard, but there are real advantages to it.
Right. Absolutely.
I have absolutely no expectations of the pillows looking right on my sofa right now, and I'm cool.
Exactly.
But when I was staying home, or even, we'll have like an extended break, a week off or something, I find myself really bothered by the pillows not being right. Like the cushions not being in the right spot on the couch.
Right.
Which is somehow a job only I'm capable of doing.
Yeah, exactly.
I don't understand. With all the people in my house, you would think. No, my husband is also very good at it, but he cares less than I do about it.
Exactly. Yeah. And sometimes I know. Yeah. But I'm with you. I'm with you 1,000% on that one. Oh.
You mentioned something at the beginning about how you felt like your resignation from fashion was like a release of the identity you had come to know.
Yeah.
I'd love to know what it's been like figuring out the next iteration of you.
Yeah, it's been super difficult. I actually get that question a lot, which I'm actually thankful for, but it's been really challenging. And it's so funny because the other day I was in a scroll hole on Facebook and I saw this graphic and quote of like, just be who God designed you to be. And I was like, I really dislike that saying. I really dislike it. And it was like, and at first I was like, why do you not like that so much? You know?
Yeah.
I was like, oh gosh, you know. And I was like, I dislike it because we don't always get to see and know who God has designed us to be. Because I think we're always in some sort of process of what He's designing us to be. So we may not know in each season what it is until the next season is over.
Yeah.
So for me, that's why I dislike it, because I think it's a constant working process. And you may not find out until years later. And I feel like that's kind of what happened to me. I had let go of an identity that I invested in education in, right? So, I mean, I went to school for it. I went to the best school for it. And I'm proud of that because I had an incredible experience at FIT. And then going into work right off the bat in your major, I think now is like unheard of. And so I invested so much time. I invested tears. I invested hours. And then when it is gone in a blink of an eye, it's like, well, whoa, what do I do now? It was like, what do I do now? And so I think, the process along the way, I think for me, I had to be removed from that industry. And I literally feel like I have just been, the whole process of being built back up, so to speak, is crumbling down to a foundation, and literally just year by year over the past years, just layering up a new foundation, and finding that new identity of what I'm, what feels good to be doing now in this season of life. And I think a lot of times we get confused with calling, like, well, what are we called to do? It's like, I think that your callings change in every season of life. Like, you've got to embrace that season of life and figure out what you're supposed to be doing during that season. It's not like this ambiguous of like, oh, well, I'm going to go, do this for the rest of my life because that's my calling. I think we tend to get that a little confused. So that's probably a really long-winded way of saying it was challenging to figure out how to get from there to where I am now, but that's the process.
Yeah.
You got to go through the process.
Absolutely. And I think really releasing this idea, I call it the once and for all. I have this desire to know once and for all, like, how is this going to go?
Yeah.
What am I doing? What am I called to do? All of those things. And I feel both longing for them and great repulsion from it.
Correct.
Because I have no idea. The only thing I know how to do is do the next thing.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
And, anytime I've tried to figure it out, I always just end up like running myself into the wall.
Oh my gosh, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, absolutely.
What is something that I haven't asked you, but I should?
Oh my goodness. I think maybe one thing that comes to mind in kind of this theme of women in business is marriage.
Mm.
So I think maybe one of the things that I know is important to me in being back in business and, doing my thing, so to speak, is how does it work being married?
Yeah.
How does that work? And I think that's another area where women tend not to talk about, right? We just kind of, we're married, we're doing it. And I know marriage is definitely something that I love to talk about and love to just to hear how other people do it and what's working for them in their season of life. So
I love how you phrase that. So what's working for you now in this season of life with your marriage?
Yes. So I would say communication. Mm. So Alan and I have always struggled with this and I think for one reason, when we got married, we quickly found out we were having a child. So I think we were always sort of on this put out the fire mode, right? Mm. It was just constant. And we were also just always felt like we were in a constant state of flux. Like everything was just always up in the air. We had so many things to make decisions on, and we were moving, we were not moving, we were working, we were not working, new job, no new job, in house. I mean, you name it. I feel like Alan and I have had a very kind of crazy adventure. And so I think when we finally moved back to this area, to Connecticut, and have kind of stayed in one spot for more than 4 years, which is amazing, we have finally figured out, we've had the bandwidth, I think, to figure out the communication that works for us. And again, I think one of the blessings for me was when going back to work again has forced us to figure it out, and not maybe figure it out eventually. And so the communication is so key for us. We are very intentional about how we communicate and what times of day we're communicating with one another. And we even have admin meetings once a week on a Sunday to go over what the week is going to entail or what we think it's going to bring. Of course, there's always speed bumps and curveballs always being thrown at us. But I think when you plan or when you can communicate a plan, you're much more ready to receive those curveballs, right? So and then they don't feel like work. It's like, or you're walking through the mud. It's just like, you're much more prepared to take on those additional things that get thrown into your lap. So communication is huge for us. And we do it all sorts of different ways, whether it's text, call, in person, or email. I find that sometimes, we have to leverage all forms of communication to kind of keep it going throughout the day. But that's one huge thing. Communication is huge for us.
You and Ellen, I know this story. You guys have been together for a really long time.
Yeah, a very long time, since the 6th grade. So
right? I think, and so this is really telling, because I think sometimes we assume that we're going to meet somebody and we're going to have a connection, and that connection is going to be so great that we're just going to communicate and connect seamlessly. And that's just such a myth. Like, we don't live in Hallmark movies.
Yeah, no, awful. It couldn't be, it's like couldn't be further from the truth.
So I'd love for you to say a little bit about the journey of this, learning how to communicate with somebody from 6th grade to today, because I'm sure it's been a process. It's been a crazy process. And I think that it's also been really fun at the same time. But I think it goes back to, for me, I know it goes back to just being aware of what season of life you're in,
because whether you have, whether you're newly married, your communication in life is just going to look so different from raising a ton of kids in the home and you're both working. Mm-hmm. So I think what I have learned is just like taking inventory and taking special attention to where he is in his season of life, and then working out, like saying, okay, all right, if this is what's going on, like what's the best way to communicate with him now? It's not always going to be this way, but let's just kind of figure out now. And I think when you have a good idea of what now looks like for your spouse, it's just super helpful for you as a wife. It's just like, taking into consideration what's going on in his season and just being aware of it. I think that's what's worked. You do have to swallow a lot of pride along the way, I think, too. And there's a lot of humbling that goes with that, and surrendering, of just saying, okay, it is what it is, and we're going to work with this. Yeah. But I am thankful, because I feel like, and Alan will tell you this too, we have just become the bestest of friends. And, I think like about 2 months ago, we had this interesting exchange, and we were in the car by ourselves for once. And so it was like this exchange of like, you've become like the bestest friend. Like, and when I think, I can't do anything without you. Like, I want to do everything with you. That becomes like this sort of it was a really neat moment in our lives together, because it was just like, I can't do this without you. Like, there's no way. And I think that's just based on, our friendship and marriage evolving throughout the gazillion years, I feel like. So I don't know if that made any sense, but I think having a real, being intentional about where your spouse is and knowing where they are and respecting that and figuring out how to move forward.
Yeah, I love what you said. Let's just figure out now.
Yes.
What a gift that is, to just figure out now.
Yep. We have a saying, we always say in our house, so what, now what?
So what, now what? Oh, I love that.
It is. Yeah. So what, now what? We're here. We are here. So, yeah. And I will just kind of say this too, it hasn't always been easy, obviously, because marriage is a full-time job. It's work. And one thing that I didn't really understand for a good portion of time was that we are one team. We're one team. It's, we're not against one another. We are not, we are on the same team. And Alan used to have to say that to me all the time. Like, dude, we're on the same team, just trying to help.
Yeah. So. I think it's interesting. I think, when we're growing up, we do see situations as competitive.
Right. Yep.
And sometimes we even see our work as competitive. Like,
yes.
If somebody else is being successful, we're like, that means that I'm not. Like, there is a competitive nature in that. And I really love to think about this idea of, we are all on the same team. Like, globally, we are here on Earth as teammates. And then, the more micro we zoom in on it, things are working for you. We are on the same team.
Right. Yep.
Oh, I'm glad to be on your team, Whitney.
Thanks. Me too.
All right. I've got a handful of lightning questions to get through.
Ma'am. You got it.
All right. Your go-to jam when you need to up your energy.
Anything by Daft Punk.
Nice. What time do you wake up?
Between 5 and 5:30 a.m.
What's breakfast?
Okay. Don't make fun of me. Oatmeal with dried fruit. I sound like a 95-year-old. And or eggs and avocados.
Love. What is your favorite ritual?
Praying and lacing up my running sneakers.
Coffee or tea?
Coffee. Mm-hmm.
Morning person or night owl?
Morning. Please don't reach me after 8:00 at night. I will not be able to talk to you.
What book do you give most?
So as of late, it has been Girl, Wash Your Face. It's one of my favorites.
Miss Hollis, she brings the goods.
Yeah, she's pretty good.
What can someone do to help you feel appreciated?
Words of affirmation for me go like, that is just like music to my ears. So I think words of affirmation, I love flowers. I am a big flower person. I love a good handwritten note. Like there's nothing better than words on paper. And or honestly, a simple thank you for me goes a long way.
I love that. Thank you. Now, I want people to follow you online, and I want them to reach out to you for this consultation, because I think that I'm just, I have this vision of Stacey London from What Not to Wear, and I have this sinking feeling that my pants and my shirt is just wrong. So tell people how they can find you online.
Yes. So there's a few ways. So if you are an Instagram lover, which I am, you can follow me on Instagram at W Sabins. If you are in business, you can also follow me on LinkedIn, which I would love to connect with more people, because I just love that. So you can find me under Whitney Sabins there on LinkedIn. And then feel free my website is not quite up and running yet for my wardrobing business, but you can absolutely email me. And that's just my first name, Whitney.Sabins@gmail.com.
Awesome. And we'll have all of this in the show notes.
Perfect.
Whitney, this has been such a pleasure. Thanks for spending time with me.
Absolutely. Loved it. Thank you.